Let's go!
FF7, not Rebirth, FF7 Returns, Reimagination, Reborn, Reunioned, Returns in. A lot of information. And I haven't had a chance to catch up this week on it, but Kitase, Hamaguchi-san, they've been talking a whole bunch about the next game. Talking about some reactions of stuff that's happening to this game. The PC release, which is going quite well. Seemingly is selling pretty good. I'm happy about that. It's going through some rough patches right now, some AMD hardware issues that they have addressed officially for FF7 Rebirth on PC. But for the majority of us, like, it's running pretty good, and there's a lot of customizability to Unreal Engine 4, which allows a lot of people to dial in that game and really get it running quite nice. And it seems like every single day I'm waking up to some new FF7 Rebirth thing that people are discovering and finding out. Just to give my 2 cents for those that have not been keeping up on my FF7-ness, like what's been happening after Rebirth. Probably have an idea of what I feel about the ending, but when they're gonna show stuff off and how they're gonna show stuff off, the time frame in accordance to that, comparable to what Remake was to Intergrade and stuff leading up until Rebirth, kind of lines up around summer of this year. Like, no kidding. We're already just about 1 year since the game was released. My still big prediction of Part 3 is a 2027 right around the 30th anniversary. So maybe in a first quarter 2027 launch of Part 3, which is a very optimistic assumption of when that could happen. I would love it, but that game is going to be filled so much to the brim content-wise if they're truly not planning on cutting everything. And we know they're adding new things, but even if they didn't add new things, if you think of the scale and breadth of what Part 3 is going to offer, and how many new zones are there, and how many story beats are there, and how those zones change, and all that kind of stuff without getting into big spoilers and stuff, it's a lot, dude. Like, it's comparable, if not bigger than Rebirth. So, all things considered, I think having Rebirth as the standard and the building blocks of what Part 3 is going to be is going to help them and their development move that much smoother. Almost 10 years into the same development team using that same engine to produce video games, which doesn't happen that often in this industry. Usually you have to switch engines and learn new things. The fact that the majority of the squad that has been working on Remake and Rebirth and Part 3 is the same people is huge, dude. And just to talk about that from a development standpoint is so substantially beneficial that it's hard to imagine that happening that much in this industry. It doesn't. It really doesn't. So that's a good thing. It's why I don't think Part 3 is going to lean into Unreal Engine 5. I think they're going to stay in UE4, but I think the game is just going to be greatly expanded from what Part 2 is. And it's why they've been talking so much about air combat, or I'm sorry, air travel and world traversal, because I think they've already figured out the majority of that shit because their teams are so focused and they've been working in this engine and doing this shit for no shit almost a decade. Anyway, that's a lot of confidence, and it leads me to be somewhat, I'd say, optimistic that they can hit a 2027 30th anniversary release of Part 3. I'd love it, dude. I'd love it. Kitase says the scenario itself for Part 3 of FF7 Remake project was completed by Nomura at the end of last year, and he said he's very satisfied with it. We talked about this a little bit before. Scenario isn't the story necessarily, where it's like, oh, Nomura just wrote it out on some kitchen napkins and it's good to go. Now consult the texts. That's not exactly it. The scenario is kind of like the composition of what the game is. And from beat to beat to beat, like you get from here, then you unlock that, then the characters move here, and here's like the middle portion, here's the end portion. How the game is as a structure is kind of like what scenario detailing is. Storyboarding sort of like outlines how a movie is and where your shot composition is. This is like a very detailed storyboard of like, then the player unlocks this, and then you get that, and then around this time this happens. Like, and then those details what it makes as a game. And yes, it'll line up around story beats, but again, Nojima is the writer of the original FF7, writer of this stuff, writer of Crisis Core. It's been the same dude the entire time. So that's the person that's writing the story, and that has been all on Nojima, you know? As part of the next, as the next part is the conclusion, he gave Nomura the homework that he wanted something that would respect the original while also giving a sense of satisfaction beyond what could be experienced in the original. Something that would conclude the remake project. That was finally handed in at the end of the year, and the scenario for the third installment was then completed. I'm very satisfied with it, and I'm sure it will be satisfying. It'll be a satisfying conclusion for fans as well. So this is an admittance that what we are playing in the Rebirth project, I'm sorry, in the Remake project, the Remake trilogy, is not a direct remake, as we have picked up on that right now. It hasn't directly been confirmed yet, more inferred, that we are playing something that is in many ways a spiritual successor to the original Final Fantasy VII. So yes, we need a game that has a proper amount of bow ties. You gotta wrap up these stories that concludes a lot of these plot points and elements. Because again, yes, Rebirth did that to some things, but not everything, and introduced many more new things that was kind of like, what? What are we talking about now? So to be honest, yeah, we need Advent Children shit, bro. Like, just acknowledge that that happened. That's important. It's stuff like that, where this as an entire compendium, the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, which included this and many other games technically, is a part of that, which is why they re-released Crisis Core, which is why Advent Children came back to theaters. Like, they want us to know about these things. And yes, they have come into effect in some ways throughout Rebirth and Remake. I get it. But really, like, you need to sort of acknowledge that that shit happened. So if the next game offers that, I'll be pretty satisfied, dude. It's crazy that you need the next game to make the ending of the second game make sense. We're gonna need that, dude. Here's a couple of Shinra arc. Check this out. This is crazy, dude. Hamaguchi says they have no plans to significantly cut down the number of minigames in Part 3. What he said before is that they're not going to implement them the same way they did in the second installment, that they're going to make some changes. So that's good news to me. Did I love every single minigame and goofy thing you can do in Rebirth? No, dude. Gears and Gambits can literally suck my nuts. I think the pace of which those minigames appear, how they appear, and when they appear was what made them feel in many ways exhausting to some people, where they just popped up in spots where you weren't expecting a minigame. Did that minigame feel like it really needed to be there? And yeah, I can see why people would feel that way, dude. Queen's Blood is one of those ones that was always like mostly optional throughout the majority of the game, mostly. But some of them was just like, okay, yeah. I'm happy that the next game is going to have just as much variety. Again, FF7 is a game that's about variety, so that it's just being true to what FF7 is. But where and how they appear needs to change. I think so, yeah. Again, FF7 Rebirth was a very ambitious game that did a lot of ambitious shit and almost too much of it. Actually a game where there can be too much of a good thing to a certain degree, where even I, to the breadth and scale of this world, and the rewards for this shit is legit good. It wasn't like, here's some bullshit materia at the end of it that you're never gonna use, or a weapon that you already have. It wasn't, no. The stuff that they were giving you for these minigames, rewards, side quests, missions, VR stuff was good. It was quite good. So I wanted to do most of it. At that point, it started to feel like, all right, I kind of just want to move the story, dude. Right? I would love to move the story a little bit in this way. So if there's one thing that I hope they learn is that the incentivization to do that shit should maybe be a little less, I hope. And it feels like there's a part in the OG FF7 that is clearly like, hey, this is side questing time, buddy. I think having moments like that in the game will be great to a certain degree, and it'll open up more. And this was expected. Like, this once again boils down to a situation where people are like, is that gonna make it into the game? And I'm like, of course it is, dude. Cloud cross-dressed into a gigantic Las Vegas style showpiece that was 10 times more than what was something we thought was going to get cut. Like, we thought that was going to get cut from the original remake. As soon as that cross-dressing scene was there and they did all of that with the wall market, I knew, oh, everything's here, dude. They're going to make sure everything shows up in some way. Most things are going to be here. So yeah, of course the slapping scene's in. Hamaguchi says he heard a ton of players saying they want them to leave that slapping minigame in. Yes, requests to take away minigames and requests to add minigames. That's what the directors are dealing with. To them, he says, I think we're going to deliver something really top-notch, so please be excited. Of course. They've gotten a lot of requests to release Queen's Blood as its own separate, like, mobile game or whatnot. He says they have no plans to do so. They're looking into ways that they can add the game and make it unique for Part 3. Yeah, we already got this impression. Queen's Blood ain't going fucking nowhere, dude. You know why, chat? Because Queen's Blood as a TCG, as a card game, fits within the walls of FF7 Rebirth. And can it really change outside of that? Not really. They have to redesign the way a lot of the game works. So if they released a mobile version of this current Queen's Blood of its own standalone, that might not be a great game. It needs to go through like a rework. It needs to go through something that, like, hey, the next part of the game, here's actually what Queen's Blood will be if we let it grow. If we let it grow into a true TCG that can actually expand a bit. To be real, Queen's Blood sort of like backs itself into a corner of what you figure out how to do. The lanes and the points and the pieces and how you have to occupy those lanes and take them away from people. There's only so much that works. And then it's just impossible to get beaten if you have certain combinations of shit. So yeah, so it needs a rework and it needs to go through something that allows it to exist. I think when it goes through that in the next part, and then you release it as its own game. 100%, dude. After that happens, give it another game to like iron out the kinks and really add more meat to what the experience is. At that point, you can make a standalone mobile / PC or whatever release of Queen's Blood as a game. And I think that can happen. You just have to like wait till you get there. Maybe it happens sometimes before part 3 and then part 3 it's there some more, but who knows? I think the time frame to release that probably will be after they redesign certain elements and flesh out what Queen's Blood can be as a full big game that keeps going, you know? They don't plan to do anything like that. But yeah, I think part 3 it's going to be a lot different. I think it's going to work around the same foundation, similar to how like the combat in Remake is similar to the combat in Rebirth. It's just way better. I think they'll improve Queen's Blood in ways that will just be like, oh my god, how can we play the old one? Got more. 4Gamer asks Kitase if the third installment will be for the next PlayStation 6 console, which happened multiple times technically to this Remake series. This Remake trilogy. Part 1 was exclusive to PlayStation for a while. DLC expansion was exclusive to next generation hardware for some goddamn reason. That still blows my freaking mind that the Yuffie DLC for the longest time was only on PlayStation 5, dude. Kitase says nope, and you can rest assured that the next installment will not be exclusive to the next console. He doesn't say it isn't console exclusive. I think we all kind of just hope that exclusivity has not been a boon for Square Enix. It's kind of been a bane over the past couple releases. Having good PC ports, having the game on Switch 2, having all that kind of stuff would be nice, but we'll see. I don't know where that's eventually going to go. And it feels like PlayStation exclusivity has been a thing that's been locked in for like 10 plus years, but who knows? Maybe shit has changed. If part 3 is at launch on a PS5, not a PS6, if it's a PS5 game, maybe breaches into PS6, then at least there is a PS5 Pro. I'm not saying everybody has one, but FF7 Rebirth runs really goddamn good on a PS5 Pro. So we won't be limited to the very kind of rough situation that FF7 Rebirth was, where everybody, like absolutely everybody, is succumbed to a very blurry 1080p. I just hope that we get games like this on a variety of different hardware. I hope that we get a very scalable Switch 2 version. I hope that we get Microsoft versions. I hope we get PC versions. I hope this shit's on everything, man. And I get it, FF7 has historically been a PlayStation brand, but who gives a shit anymore? I think if you like these franchises and you like these games, you want them to be successful, you want them to reach more people. I really do hope that happens. I hope there's a Samsung fridge version. So anyway, that's good news. That being said, if part 3 comes out and it's on PS5 Pro, I'm fairly confident that part 3 on the PS5 Pro at launch, if it is PlayStation exclusive, will look really fucking good. That pisser tech is quite nice, dude. It doesn't reach the limits and levels of, obviously, what PC hardware is capable of because it's so scalable and different. This game, Rebirth especially, on PS5 Pro, was really good. You gotta give them credit. At least there will be very good-looking versions of the game, just not as, I'd say, monetarily acceptable because they're on very expensive hardware. Hamaguchi says he would like to bring some of the FF7 Rebirth PC upgrades to the PS5 version. When we released the promotional video for the PC version, we received a lot of requests to update the PS5 version, and I'm thinking we would like to make it happen at some point within the limits of what's possible with the PS5 version's performance. This directly lines up with what we just talked about. There's going to be a PS5 version, obviously, of Remake Part 3, so this could even be like a testing ground of figuring out what is capable with that hardware with our next version, because it is in the same engine. It is going to be effectively producing the same similar game that leads us into the next game. So it's like, all right, can we make this shit work? Is some of the stuff that happened on the PC version possible? That makes a lot of sense to me, that this could be the thing. And yeah, similar to that thing we were just talking about, Hamaguchi and Kitase say they want to increase the opportunities for more players to experience the FF7 franchise in 2025 and in the next year onwards, and they'll be taking action to introduce the FF7 FF7 series to new fan bases. This is Nintendo. Nintendo and Microsoft. Like, what else is there? Also, from the next year and beyond, we are thinking about introducing FF7 to new fan bases. We'll be taking some kind of action, so we hope you look forward to it. Yeah, it's Switch 2 shit, straight up. There's already been rumors of it, that FF7 is going to be coming to Xbox, that it's coming to Switch 2, that Rebirth is the same thing. I think what is rumored right now is that 2025 Remake lands on other systems, including Nintendo hardware. And then the following year, it's Rebirth that lands on other systems as well as potentially Nintendo hardware. There's only so many places this can go, dude. I think optimistically that happens. And also, yeah, FPS Raptor said the same thing, to emulate a Cyberpunk situation. What if they got some dope-ass director and some cool-ass production crew and you make a series? What if there's an FF7 show? We can fix Before Crisis, that piece of shit. There's a chance that if you turn this into some kind of like syndication, Last Order, no, it's not Before Crisis, it's Last Order, that freaking terrible ass anime. Maybe, just maybe, there's a spot in the future where FF7, I'm not even saying live action or anime or animated or whatnot, creating a full show that looks like the cutscenes of FF7 or something on an arcane level is not financially feasible, but still getting an animation house and some good writers to produce a showrunner for FF7 could greatly expand it if it's good. And that's the problem. It has to be good, dude. There is 100% space for this to exist. This is also good news. Hamaguchi says that he personally thinks it's inevitable that console and PC versions of Square Enix games will be released at the same time or very close together. It's also a reality that the world is no longer in an era where limiting the platform of which a game is played to specific hardware means that the benefits are particularly great. We also realize that through the Remake project, and the company has announced that it is shifting towards multi-platform development. Future new IPs will be developed along those lines. So personally, I guess the trend to release the console and PC versions at the same time or both releasing extremely close to each other is inevitable. And you know what that means? PC ports getting better. Capcom ran through this too, where Capcom PC ports were in kind of a rough spot for a little while. Not necessarily the best when they were getting very PC happy in like the mid 2010s and shit. They've gotten better. The good news is that Rebirth is easily the best non-online Final Fantasy PC port they've had. Still with issues. Granted, we're learning about those issues right now, how it's not like there's a lot of hardware compatibility issues that people are solving, yada yada yada. Clearly significantly better than some of the efforts they've had before, especially with FF7 Remake, which was kind of abysmal out of the box, as well as FF16 to a certain degree with a really rough demo. I'm sure that's gotten better, but like first impressions are a lot, dude. And for at least a lot of folks, the PC version of Rebirth, it at least works and produces visuals comparable and better to that of the PlayStation 5 version, which is quite nice. It says for future IPs though, yes. Well, he says we realize this through the Remake project, and the company is going to be shifting towards multi-platform development and how also future IPs will be developed along those lines. It just means that Square Enix is moving multi-platform from this point forward. Most Japanese developers are doing the shit that Capcom did, which is good. And it's like a hyper focus on established franchises and doing what people have been asking for and like all that kind of shit, right? Not taking all these crazy risks on things that are weird and odd, and maybe focusing a lot on their own IP, playing it a bit safe, which is kind of good right now. To a certain degree, just because some of these Japanese companies have not been paying attention to their IPs, have been trying to do all this crazy new shit to make all this crazy new money. Our old IPs only make so much. Now they've been gone for so long that it's like, well, where the hell are they, dude? What the fuck is going on? Hamaguchi says the development of Part 3 and FF7 Remake project is going very well and is on schedule. They say it's going well, and after Rebirth was finished, we immediately started working on the third game. By the end of 2024, we had completed a build that was able to confirm what we should aim for as a game. Damn. So they already had a functioning alpha of like mechanical shit by the end of 2024. All that means what they really have to do is art and talent, where it's like voice acting and, you know, cutscene making, art assets, like building textures and all that kind of stuff to like put on top of it. Just a fuckload of art. And funny enough, the things that usually come online the fastest is art. Like, no shit. The stuff that can take a while is polish, but even in the scale and size of a game this big, many of those art assets and all that kind of shit will come online really quick. The stuff that gets delayed a long time isn't because, oh, this is taking so much time. It isn't the art that's holding things up. It's the fact that, okay, we're gonna make art for all this shit, but we don't know if that's gonna make it into the game, dude, because these guys haven't figured out on a conceptual level how to execute it. I get it, our game is supposed to be airship combat, so we have to create all the art and all the assets for airship airship combat, but it's not working yet. So now we're stuck. Now we have to wait, like that kind of shit, right? So when you have a game this big, the fact that they have that working is really good news. If that's what they're telling us, airship stuff and world traversal and all the crazy bullshit, how all that stuff's gonna come together in part 3, extremely good news. This shit's coming out soon. I am more confident than I was even at the beginning of this shit. This shit's gonna be coming out soon, bro. How do we, now we know, yeah, we even know now, good point, Blitz, we even know that from very simple mods, that 7 party members can work. It doesn't work great in FF7 Rebirth, but people literally got 7 characters working at one time. Just from a design standpoint, I'm sorry, from a functioning standpoint, their engine's already doing that shit. We can already see the direction of where we want to land, so we've been working towards that since the beginning of this year. We are proceeding without delay from schedule we planned when we started the Remake project, so we hope you look forward to it. I think that's the majority of the news. I don't think there was that much more. I'm more confident than ever, and believe it or not, I think there's a high likelihood that even in this year, 2025, we could be getting a teaser. In the same way that FF7 Rebirth had a teaser, a few years ago, FF7 had a 25th anniversary celebration, and in this celebration, they showed off like several things regarding FF7 projects. They showed off the Crisis Core thing, but they also showed off like straight up a teaser of FF7 Rebirth. The first teaser, there actually was some gameplay stuff in here. This was a long time ago. This was 2022, chat. So at the middle of the year, this will be 3 years ago. This is when they first teased stuff. And then they had the title. They announced that it was going to be 3 games. I think that is close to where we're at right now. Like, no shit. We're at the point where in mid-2025, we could be there, show off what at least this game is in some fashion.